All right, so this is Gabe from Detailing Growth. I figured we just get into some biz ops type stuff and talk about what it looks like to have your shop and the necessary components for it to operate at a higher level. So the first thing I want to mention is that the number one thing that I hear from people is that most of the time their shop is in chaos, and that's usually because they don't have a planned workflow. So what I want to do is talk about what that workflow looks like in your shop and just what that process looks like from a high level and all the components that you're going to need to make sure that you have all of the necessary pieces to put together a plan so that it's in less chaos at bare minimum. Let's see if my line tool works. Oh man, look at that. It does. So these are the big components of a good workflow, and that's going to be client consult, right? So that's one part. And then we've got vehicle inspection. Like my awesome handwriting. This is what working on a keyboard your whole life does to you. We've got prep. So let's just go like this. And then we've got our prep. And that's going to be anything related to washing the car, so on and so forth. Then we've got application. Right? So this is going to be all the area that covers all of the polishing, paint correction, any of disassembly, application of film. And then we've got quality control. So quality control. I don't like the way that one came out. Let's just go with this. We'll get rid of that. So we've got quality control, and then we've got client delivery. So we're just going to put delivery. So these components make up your shop's workflow in terms of how the vehicle comes in, what happens next, and how you structure all of this. So I'm going to move on to the next page here. So, because there's not enough room for me to write here. So we're going to come down here and we're going to go, let's start with the client consult. So we're just going to go consult. So the consult is going to be, this person has showed up at your shop. You've looked at you brought the vehicle inside and you've invited them into your space, right? So we invite client into our space, right? So let's go like this. Freeform. Let's see if I can get all of this. And then, cool. So we're going to invite them into our space and we're going to make sure that they feel welcome. And we're also going to begin the consult by finding out what they need. Find what's needed. Right? So again, my horrible handwriting, this is actually hilarious. So once we understand their needs, and let's just say that this person said they wanted to book an appointment with you, but they really wanted to decide what they wanted when they got there after they could speak to you, right? So let's just assume that they're leaving the car and we just needed to nail down the specifics, right? So once we've got the client consult complete, we find out what they need. Ultimately, that comes down to, we're going to build the work order, right? So work order. And hopefully you're using something like you're able that has the ability to track work orders and issue work orders to specific employees that are working in the shop. But once we've got the work order complete, you got your deposit locked in, client consult's done, they're gone. You thank them, and you tell them that you'll be in contact with them, you'll keep them updated. So then what we do is, once the consult and acquisition of the car is complete, we're going to move down into vehicle inspection, right? So this is another important piece in the whole process. So this is one of the most important parts of your entire process, because this is going to be what the inspection process is for. Number one, you probably should have reviewed the car together with the client, and you could have given them some visual demonstrations showing what areas the film covers on the car, so on and so forth. Now that we've got the job locked in, we can begin the inspection here. So the first thing we want to do is capture photos of the vehicle as it stands before the wash process. And ideally, you want to do that in the last place that the customer saw the car was, if you can. And if there's good enough lighting, so that way you have pre-wash, and the customers also remembers, God forbid, if you need to produce photos later, look, we took pictures of it right where it was when you left it with us. This is where this was done. So that's what we like to do, and it's what I recommend other people do. Now, the next thing you're going to ask me is, okay, what do I do with the pictures now that I have them? Okay, so this is why having shop management software like Able is extremely useful. So if I load up Able and I pick a job, so if I'm inside the job, I can click Add, I can click Inspection, and then I can label this. I can just say, I got my keyboard detached, pre-wash. And then I can just start adding the pictures from my library. Now, I'm just going to add this picture of me. For every picture you add, if you scroll below it, there's a notes area here. That's a guy. And you can keep dragging and dropping pictures in if you're on the desktop, but it'll attach the camera, it'll attach the photos right from your camera off of the iPad or phone or whatever you're using. So then what you can do is you'll just click the check mark, you'll get the uploaded, and then you'll see right here, if you click the inspections tab, you have the pre-wash photo album. You can open it and you'll be able to slide around inside the photos, and you can download them and so on and so forth. What we like to do is we'll click add, and then we'll click approval. And then what we can do is what we'll do is we'll send the actual inspections to the customer just to let them know, hey, this is happening. Just wanted to here's some pictures of the car, how it stands. And we'll just send that to them and let them know that there's no current changes to your work order. You don't need to approve anything. This is just an update for you. And you can write that in the message here. So that's part of the workflow. And we'll take post-wash pictures. So we take the pre-wash and we take the post-wash pictures. And what that allows us to do is, because sometimes you genuinely don't see things on a car until after it's been washed. And you also don't see things until you look at the vehicle in a different light or you put a paint light on it. So that gives us a shot to take pictures of it, what it looks like when it's clean, just in case it was covered in dirt or it was covered in salt or whatever it was and it was gross. So we always take post-wash pictures. Those pre-wash and post-wash pictures have saved us more money than I can think of when I look at how the business has run itself over time. We've had people come in with 10-year-old cars and accused us of putting a giant ding in their A-pillar, and we're like, oh no, nope, that's right here. You can see it in this picture that we saw when you dropped off the car. That's why taking these pictures is so important, because number one, the customer knows that you're detail oriented. Number two, you're covering your butt, and the customer knows you're covering your butt, which is an automatic trust boost. So that's something to think about. And the next stage in workflow is we've got the wash done. Now we're going to start prepping the car. So we move it over to the area in the shop that's doing prep. So that can be the guys that are, doing the detail. It can be the person doing paint correction. If you have a shop hand that is, it could be disassemble, because I'm going to butcher that word, disassembly, if I try and spell it here. You're going to have the disassembly of like door panels or bumpers or trim, odd things like that. You've moved it out of the wash bay, and now you're talking about beginning that prep work. And the prep work should have its own dedicated area, because it doesn't, I'm going to show you how our shop is laid out. And this is why workflow is really important to be considered. So this is our shop. And the primary door entrance is here. It's a single, 17-foot wide door. And there's a small ramp that comes up here. So you can't just turn in this way, because there is a super hard pickup right here. So vehicles have to come in this way. We have a drive-on lift here. And actually it goes further back on this side. So it's actually more like this. But ultimately we'll call this the wash bay right here. To here. So this is our wash bay with the drain. Right, so vehicles come in the wash bay. Up here is just another clean area. You could fit 2 cars here, but you don't want to. This is about one. There's enough room to do 1 car here as well. Usually when they're doing paint correction and stuff over on this other side of the floor. So what we do here is car gets washed here, gets blow drying here in the wash bay. Then what we do is we back the car out, and what we like to do is we like to stack back to front. So the car will essentially get reversed into one of these spaces. There'll be mini bay. There's there are bays here. We typically go like this. Here's one, and this is usually tint as well. And then we have another, and then we have another here. We try not to stack 1, 2, 3, 4. We try not to stack 4 cars at once that way. We usually try and do 3, because that way we've got more room. So any cars that we're working on are typically in one of these spaces, right? So they're backed in is what I usually prefer. And the prep work begins. They'll do paint correction, window tint, or other items over this way. And if we need to do anything related to wheels off, or we need to disassemble anything, or we need to get the car up off the ground to wrap underneath of it, we'll come over here and we'll back the car onto the lift, and then we'll complete the work right here on the lift if we don't need to swap on any of the other vehicles. And then ultimately, customer comes in, they usually get to pick up their car right here. This is where we usually have our pictures staged. And we go over the vehicle, and the doors open, and then customer leaves out the front. So our shop is unique in that we have one way in and one way out, and our prep area is in the back of the shop. That's where the drain is. So it's been very particularly thought out in how we move cars around and what we do with them. And you should be doing the same thing, ensuring that by the time that car is pulled up to the front here, after it's been in these bays, after it's been over at wheels off, and by the time you bring it out to the front here, this area here, the car should be completely done. This should be completely done. Customers coming on the way. You don't need to do anything. The car's been triple checked. Hand the customer off his keys, and he's good to go. So that was preparation and application, because the work would have been getting done in these places as well. But we want to keep this airway here clear so that way cars can get in and out and they're not blocking. And after we move from prep to application, it's typically time to make sure that we've taken some pictures of the job, right? So at this point, we've taken job pictures and we've sent some to the customer, right? Because that's an unexpected surprise for them. And that always leaves them happy that we've sent them that. And during application, we make sure that we have SOPs in place. And obviously you want to have SOPs in place for all of your processes, but when it comes to application, whoever is doing the application, you want to make sure that they understand that process. So you've got skilled labor doing that by SOP, right? And then you also have somebody and this transitions into the next section, and that's quality control. Right, so we go prep, application, quality control. After the application's done, and obviously it should be done, a QC, whoever's in charge of that, and it should be somebody separate than the installer. The installer does not QC the car. He doesn't, because it's very difficult for an installer to hold themselves accountable and to keep that piece of them that just wants to get it done so that they can be done, and they're not willing to hold themselves to a standard. That's a rare occurrence when you do find an installer that does that and they're okay with it. Just know that QC should always be done by another person, and they shouldn't play favorites when it comes to QC. QC happens, and if something happens where something on the install needs to be addressed during QC, right? We need to figure out how long to fix, but does it change timeline? Does timeline change? And ultimately, you come back to this. Does the timeline change? And if you can fix it and it's easy enough, that's what we would call fixable or quick fix. Quick fixable without redo, yes, great. Does timeline change? We'll hope no. If it's not, how long to fix? New ETA on completion. So ultimately, if we have one of these issues, like this isn't worst case, but this happens, and it happens pretty normally. Like it's the whole point of QC, and it's the whole reason it's there. But if we run into this issue, we start talking about new timelines, right? So that means we need to inform client, because rushing on the job is not really the way to go. And ultimately you say, Gabe, how do I talk to the client without appearing like I don't know what I'm doing? And at the end of the day, these people trust you because you're the expert. So what we don't do is we don't get on the phone and we don't say, my installer messed up. My installer do bad. No, we don't. We say, Mr. Customer, I'm not happy with how this looks. I pulled the film off to do it again. And I say, because I know that I would want it done if it were mine, right? So a customer hears this, and what does this do, right? This doesn't set off red flags for the customer, like saying something that related to my installer did wrong. So the customer looks at this in one way when you hear this, or any reasonable customer hears this and only thinks one thing. They say, okay, these guys are trustworthy. These guys are experts, and they have morals, and I appreciate that. This is what that customer thinks. And ultimately, you know what this turns into? Take one guess, I'll tell you. Referrals. Because you looked out for them during something when you could have very easily passed the buck, right? Whether or not it's your fault or not, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you've let the customer know, and you've let them know before the day they're supposed to come and pick up the car. You let them know ASAP. ASAP. QC comes back in, and they give a thumbs up. So now what we do, we let the customer know there's usually some other steps, and you got some final cleanup, or now it's got to sit overnight, or you got to do final trimming in the morning. But now it's, you bring this information to shop foreman, right? Foreman then tells the customer rep, then tells the rep, inform client of pickup. Right? So that's all fantastic. And now what happens is you do your final checks on the car, you look it over again, and now you get to move to delivery, right? So we come to the delivery. So what are the components of the delivery? Typically, the customer delivery consists of, staging the car before they arrive, because you don't want to have an awkward interaction where you're apologizing profusely. And the other thing that we're doing is we're walking them the car. We're walking around the car with them, and we're proudly displaying our work, right? Proudly displaying. What we're not doing is not pointing issues out. No, we're not pointing out issues and things that we missed. You know why? Because we're too proud of our work. This is the most important part of this. This builds a confident customer experience. So then what do? We give them a care explanation. We tell them what they can and can't do. Cannot. They get the right, we sell them some care products, right? We make sure that they have that. They get printed instructions. God, my handwriting's getting worse. And as they're leaving, we need to make sure that we thank them. So I'm going to tell you right now, this will be the biggest hack that you're ever going to come across as an owner, operator in this industry. Right here. This is it. This is the one little nugget that you take away. Get the review. I'm going to show you how I get the review every single time. So right here, customers getting in their car. They're driving a box apparently. Doors open. Customers here. They're getting in. I'm here. I have the key still. After the customer gets in, I hand them the key, and this is what I say. Thank you for the opportunity. And then we immediately go on, and I say the biggest thing for us, and I look at it as a personal favor. My handwriting is horrible. Personal favor is a 5-star Google review. They help us so much. Besides any referrals you send our way. Thank you again. And then you give them the key. Not before this point, right? It's after this point you give them the key. So that way we want them to remember our personal favor. Because people will go out of your way if they know it's a favor for you, because people genuinely love to please other people as a whole. So that's why we do that in that specific order. That's a big part. And the one thing I forgot about is when we're going through everything with the customer during pickup and delivery, when we're at delivery, we set a 2-week follow-up before they leave. And why do we do that? Because we care. We care about the car and them. And we want the opportunity to, again, say, do you know anyone that would appreciate this? Do we know? Wow, that's horrible. That's absolutely disgusting. Do we know anybody that appreciates this? Because remember, referrals typically close at a 70% close rate. That's easy money that you're forgetting if you don't do that. Always ask. Always ask. Don't ever not ask. You've done a good job. You know they're happy. You deserve to ask for the referrals because you know that they appreciate everything that you've done for them. So now they can hold up their end of the moral bargain in making sure that you and your business is continuing to be fed by their goodwill. That's the exercise that we're doing here. You've done good work. You've fulfilled them and their need morally, so now it is their obligation to deliver you a referral. Right? And this is, of course, all like just concept talk. So if you believe it, it'll happen. So with that said, hopefully some of this nonsense or jargon and rambling I've done has been helpful for you.